Hi, welcome to What's the Point? I'm Bill Ellis, your host. Each week I talk with people about the moments that shaped them, the choices that changed them, and what those stories might spark in you. And with that said, let's get into today's conversation. How do you decide what to do with your life? At a point where you haven't really seen much of it yet, or later on when you have, but something about where you ended up just doesn't quite feel right. At the beginning, you're asked to choose a direction, a degree, a job, a path, and trust that it's the right one. And for some people it is, but for others, a lot of others, it's not. Or it is for a while, and then it changes. And by the time you realize that, you're often already some way into it. And what would change if you could experience something before you committed to it? Not read about it, not hear about it, not fantasize about it, actually step into it and see what it's really like. Well, that's what today's episode is all about. I'm your host, Bill Ellis. Welcome to What's the Point? And today I'm joined by Gabriel DeSanti and Alex Dworsky, co-founders of Staj, a platform built around this idea. Gabriel has built the following by stepping into different jobs himself, spending time inside roles and showing what they're actually like day to day. Alex is still working inside corporate environments, seeing in real time how careers unfold, where people get stuck, and how often they stay in roles that don't quite fit. Together, they've built Staj, a platform that allows people to step into those different roles and experience what they're really like before committing to them. Alex, Gabriel, good morning. Welcome.
Thank you for having
Good
us.
morning.
I'm so happy that you are able to join me because the questions that I've just gone through are significant questions to all of us, and a lot of it has to do with work,
Mhm.
with our chosen path, but a lot of it also has to do with our life and what our situation in life is. And if that changes, how does it affect the work path we've been on? So there's a whole lot here to unpack, from people new in their career to people pretty deep into the career suddenly going, oh my.
Nice.
So let's start with each of you, and you can decide who goes first. What was the point where something about careers working didn't sit right with you?
I'll go first. So I have been in corporate America for my whole career, close to 15 years. And it's something that is just a very typical path that a lot of my friends and peers have taken from college, right? They set you up with career advisors, you meet a couple of companies, and then you just pick when you're 22 without a lot of knowledge or experience. And we do those jobs without really knowing what we're getting ourselves into. And our path kind of develops that way, who you engage with and different types of things that you learn, and you're kind of just shifted into a certain direction. When COVID happened in 2020, we saw online and with our peers that a lot of people made massive changes because their lives were changing drastically. We were stuck at home, we were in front of our screen, and industries were created. And it was just such an interesting perspective to see this forced pause for everyone to take a look
Mm.
at what they value out of life in a potentially very scary time in all of our lives and how people made that shift. It helped me kind of refocus my efforts and what I cared about getting out of my career and my life and who I wanted to be around and who I wanted to become. But then I realized that there wasn't many opportunities to figure out what's next for me. What was my actual thing? I'm only aware of what I know in corporate America, but there's a huge world out there. And I didn't know how to even start on where to begin, who to speak to. How does one create a new industry or get into something new and test something out? So that's kind of how Stage was born. And I also, to explain the word of stage, it means intern in French, and it's very common in cooking, where you test out a career or you test out a job in a kitchen before you actually get hired. So you work with the chef to see if you're a good fit and vice versa. And lucky for me, my brother's a chef, so I knew all about it. And it just got me thinking about what an incredible opportunity to, before you start a job, I want to touch and feel it and I want to meet everyone in it. And it just got me thinking on why isn't that available for other careers?
That's incredible. I love the origin of the company name Staj. It's new, it's unique, and it's not forced using letters that really aren't part of the word.
Right.
You you did mention something, Alex, that I want to come back to later, but I would just want to mention it now. And that is, you talked about COVID giving us a forced pause.
Hmm.
And I think part of what we'll talk about later, because I think it's going to be essential, is committing to taking a pause and evaluating where we are.
Absolutely.
And with that, Gabriel, tell us a little bit about your work life, your work journey, and how you've ended
Yeah,
up here at Stage.
absolutely. So I would say I had a bit of a maybe unique career journey as a young person in the world. In high school, I went to trade school, and through trade school, I got certified in a trade. I got hired right out of high school to go and work in the field in that trade. That trade was computer aided drafting and design. Essentially, like kind of like an entry level engineering position was where I found myself. And I worked at that job for 2 years post high school. And then at the age of 19, really, really early in my life, I kind of had this epiphany of like, I don't think this is going to be my path forever. And, I needed to figure out something else. And thankfully at the time and like, growing up, I was always into video and content creations for over a decade now. And so that was my pivot. And my pivot was into content creation. And because I was only 19 years old, my risk tolerance was higher. And it seemed like very little risk for me at the time, to pivot into something new. And ultimately, there were years and years and years of experimentation, trying to figure out what those stories were about, where even in the field of video was I going to go because it's still very vast inside that one field. And ultimately, I landed on making videos about jobs and what it's like working in all different industries. And I have this slogan that I'm building the world's longest resume. It's kind of as a joke, but it's also kind of serious, like how many, jobs can I show off? And that's what I set out to do, and that's what I do now. So I showcase from the inside what it looks like working in all different industries, and that's how I landed here with Alex at Stage because we have very much the same mission, and we're the yin and yang to each other, and so we're able to kind of build this thing now, and it's really exciting.
Yin and yang's a great phrase for you from my perspective because you both have rich backgrounds and current situations that are vastly different, excuse me, but they complement each other. So,
Mhm.
Gabe, you have strengths that Alex hasn't realized, and vice versa. So together, it makes what you're doing that much stronger. You talked about getting started early, Gabriel, in high school and trade school. Yeah. A lot of people I see and a lot of people I talk to and realize that they've gone in the wrong direction, maybe too late. And you talked about risk being lower in your younger years. So 2 questions for you. How does it happen? How do people suddenly well into something, realize that this isn't really right for me? And then I've got a follow-up question later after you guys give me what you think on that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think people, as humans and as people, like our priorities change over time, and who we are naturally changes over time. So sometimes the realization with that shift just comes from us changing and our interests changing and our priorities changing. And that's a total normal experience. But what isn't a normal experience is then realizing that, like, oh, snap, like we have to kind of reinvent who we are. And there's not necessarily those resources in order to reinvent who we are. But it is normal to end up in that place. And so that's kind of it's kind of a crossroads that a lot of us find
Mm,
ourselves at.
mm. Good phrase. Alex?
I think it's rare to pick a career when you're so young and then it aligns with you for 50 years, right? 40 years. The beauty of modern times is that there aren't a handful of career paths to take. There are unlimited career paths to take. And as we've been seeing for the last, I don't know, 2 years, AI has been massive. And this is just the start of something, which just shows you the endless opportunities that are constantly being created that you could take your life and career into. And like Gabe said, there aren't resources for you to take a pause and understand your values and how they're aligning with what you want right now in your moment in time, and how to potentially shift and how to make sure that you are continuously doing the thing that makes you feel good and fills your cup. Because we find a lot of people stay in something that they're not happy with or isn't aligning with what they're looking for out of life. And there's no way to shift. And a lot of people get scared about taking big risks. It's a scary thing to do. So we're trying to help people find a way to make those jumps, but have more education on how to do so.
Outstanding. I want to build on that, but first, let's go back to the very start of the work journey for most of us. So most of us, it's 18, 20, 22, some of us 14, 16.
Yep.
Uh, when we choose something at that age, when people in general choose something on that age, what are they typically basing it on?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm sure Gabe and I are going to have a different perspective as well as you, Bill. My perspective is what my parents told me what to do and what aligns with the people around me that I grew up with. And whether that's having the good job, company, the title, the salary. And I think that is great to think about, but that's not everything of a career, and that's not everything that's going to fulfill somebody. But when I was 22, pretty much was, how do I set myself up for success in terms of financial support and upward mobility? But like I said, that's not even the half of it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say majority of people pick their career in that little checkbox with complete lack of information of what that is actually going to be like, and with significant without significantly experiencing or experimenting with lots of different things.
Yep.
Uh, you know, there isn't outside of like a trade school role, like in a traditional high school, there's not really like career exploration in a way where you get to put your hands on it, you get to feel it, taste it, touch it. And so I think a lot of us like pick things like what Alex said, based off of what our parents maybe suggested, based off of what our guidance counselor have maybe suggested, those influential people in our lives, because they've gone through it. And so they're guiding us based on their best, the way that they can do best, right? Like ultimately they have their best thoughts in mind for us, but it doesn't mean that they know what the right answer is. And it's just, I think, yeah, most people pick, but they pick with lacking information.
Yeah, and I think that there are internship opportunities out there when you are junior, sophomore year of college, but I always joke, you're doing the work that no one wants to do, right? You're inputting data, you're doing the same small tasks for 3 months, and that does not give you a good picture of actually what the job is. That's a good picture of what the internship is like. So that's the closest thing that I could think of that can give you a little bit of guidance outside of trade school to help young people choose, but that's
Yeah.
not showing you the full picture.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on it, Bill?
Well, let me build on what you just said, Alex, because yeah, whatever career we choose, we're going to start at the bottom, whether we're an intern or whether we're a new hire.
Okay.
It's just the way of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So for listeners that are considering what to do and whether or not an internship makes sense for them, here's how you can make it an advantage. Go do the mundane things and know you're doing mundane things, but look around. As a friend of mine says, watch the video,
Yeah.
see what's going on, talk to people,
Mm-hmm.
ask them what they do. People love to talk about themselves.
100%.
That gives, from my perspective, that gives you an entree to finding out what it's all about. Another thing that I think is a key factor here, you both mentioned that it's you receive input from your environment, be it parents, family, or some form of direction or mentorship at school. I think a lot of it has to do with what we think of as success.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we think of as success at 18 is typically much different than, say, 38, 48. Because another motivation isn't what's my success going to be in the future. It's how can I make money now because I want a car, I want to go out with my friends, I want to do this. And then we kind of
Yeah.
lock ourselves into what we're doing if we're not careful. So now let's go back, let's go further down the timeline. We talk about people that are well into whatever they've chosen to do, and suddenly it's like, yeah, I don't know about this. And when you talked about the risk, but you also touched on a real key word, I think, and I'd like you both to expand on it, and that is fear. You know, when someone's if you meet if and the collective you, our listeners and whoever's listening, the both of you and myself, when we meet people, what's the first thing most people ask us? What do you do?
Right?
That
Yep.
defines us.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
I've been X for 20 years and everyone knows me as,
Mhm.
you know, attorney, pipe fitter, whatever the case might be, and now I'm going to change, what are they going to think of me? So there's a lot of fear and unknown
Yeah.
that goes into that. How do you suggest that people start to think about that? And I'll bring this back and tie it to what your earlier comment was, Alex, about the forced pause, having a self-imposed forced pause. How do you see that? What are your thoughts for people?
When you have that time to reflect, a lot of us had a lot of time in COVID. It helped you understand what is your motivating factor, especially when we have all these external, very terrifying things happen. What are you valuing? And I think it's unnatural that you would ever have that much time to think to yourself. And I hope in our lifetimes we don't have to deal with another global pandemic. But it was really beautiful if you look at it in the sense of, you're surrounded by hopefully your friends and family, and you're able to really think about what makes you happy and what's driving you. And then in conjunction, seeing all of these new different industries and jobs pop up online, different ways to make money, different ways to fulfill your creative needs. It was such an interesting perspective to take a step back and look what really is driving you. And I think fear, yes, on your career defining you. But at that moment, I find it's very scary for me to continue on a journey in my career where it's not fulfilling me.
Mhm.
I think our life is really long, and there are so many different ways that you can take your life and your experiences. And a bigger part of my motivating factor is not fully fulfilling myself.
Mm.
Yeah. I really agree with what Alex is saying. Like I kind of have this quote or one liner in the back of my head all the time is like the biggest risk is not taking the risk at all. And it's something that I do think about often, but it's not to say and not to recognize that there is real risk in making a huge change in your life. And to your point, Bill, like people are so connected to the careers that they've chosen. It's who they are. It's their identity. But I think maybe the bigger hurdle for people is actually the success part that comes with the
Mm.
career. It's one thing to change your career, but it's another part to change your career with the huge question mark of will I then be successful in that new place? Especially if you are successful or have found a lot of success in the place that you're at. Like you could be extremely successful, but not happy. And so that's like a little bit of it's when we hear about like a lot of golden handcuff conversations of like really great situations, really great jobs, really there's people are set up for their future. So how do you leave something that's very safe and very cushy for the dream of happiness? It's
Right.
a it's a battle.
Yeah. And what we're finding is because there was no resources out there before, we've seen so much success with Staj when somebody's able to talk to the person who's finding success in that industry or not
Mhm.
finding success and touch and feel the process and see how it aligns with what you're looking for, if it excites you internally or if you hate it. I think it's really good for you to talk to people in this industry that you might not have been able to engage with before to see the 360-degree view of everything that you potentially could be in or growing into, to see if that's something that's aligning and if you could see yourself be successful in that path.
I just want to reiterate one of my thoughts, which is we use the word success and successful a lot.
Mhm.
And that is different for me than it is for you, Alex, which is different for you, Gabriel, and different for virtually every listener. So when we're
Yeah.
having that moment of forced self-imposed pause, I think the key is to say, how do we see success? If it's strictly monetary, that puts you down one road. And I suspect that's the road that causes the most unhappiness.
Right.
Because if all you want is money when you get the amount you think you want, then you want more.
Of course.
But yeah, the golden handcuff thing is one that I've got personal experience with, so I can relate to that. But let's move on a little bit. Let me challenge Staj and your concept a little bit. Try it before you commit. Sounds great. Why doesn't it happen already? What keeps us from doing that?
I mean, any of us can go out and do this. You know, any of us can go out and find these shadows for ourselves, and we don't want to shy away from that, especially in a space where, like, right now, Staj is just in New York, so like we're not accessible to, you know, the greater audience that we might be speaking to right now. But we still want to encourage people to go out and try and find these experiences for themselves if they need to. But what Staj is and what Staj will be is just a easier resource to hopefully facilitate these experiences.
Yeah, we want to be the connector. Like Gabe said, we want to
Okay.
be the entity that helps you reach out to all these different types of opportunities. Like you could do it on your own. It takes a lot of confidence, it takes a lot of research, it takes having connections. And what we found in our careers, we've gotten our successes because of the people that we know in our circles. And so our goal is to expand our circles as far and wide as possible to allow other people to start utilizing those type of opportunities. I think what has stopped people from doing this before is the risk, like we talked about, the fear. What does that look like for my career? What are the next steps? How do I take one conversation and turn it into a whole career trajectory switch?
Yep.
So our goal is to help bridge that gap for everyone.
Yeah, it's if you're asking why Staj, it's because what else right now is that resource when someone wants to change their career? Like, sure, they can go out and they can find it themselves, but there still isn't any resource. They have to, develop that resource within them for themselves. So Staj is aiming to be that resource for people who want to pivot in their careers or for people who just need to discover, new careers and new opportunities.
Yeah. And for clarification, I wasn't questioning why Staj. I was
Yeah.
questioning, it seems like such a great concept. Why haven't we been doing it pre-Staj?
I
And
mean,
I
I
think that,
suppose I suppose job shadowing is not necessarily a new concept, but the way we want to bring it together under like one umbrella is something new that, correct to your point, hasn't been done before. And from our experience, it's a dang hard thing to build. It's very much there's a supply and demand issue. There's a time commitment issues. There's lots of different things that we've run into that we're like, this is really hard, and that's probably part of the answer.
well, I'm, even though you are currently exclusively in New York City, I'm thrilled that you're here on the show to get the word out because part of what is needed, I believe, is awareness and the
Mhm.
thought pattern
Hmm.
and the the fact that it's okay. It's okay to look around. It's okay to reflect.
Yeah.
There's a young lady I know here in locally who's going through college and looking for. I mean, she's seeking. And I told her about you guys because I ran into her shortly after we had our first contact, and she's thrilled to listen to this when it comes out,
Good.
knowing that she's
Amazing.
not in New York City because she's going to, I believe, get some insight, and
Yeah.
that's powerful. Speaking of insight, let's get Staj into the real world here. When you take this concept to companies or industries, who gets it straight away and who doesn't?
The small business founders get it right away.
Oh,
They
cool.
have been in our stage's shoes very recently.
Mm,
They have been the person who is desperate to build their own thing or try out their passion and find a way to make that a career. So it's so interesting when we speak to, we call them our hosts, the people that are having these individuals shadow them. When we speak to our host, they love the idea because they wish they had a resource like this when they were going through this experience. And they have the most topical experience because they can say, I was just in your shoes. I know exactly the siege you're in. We always joke, we hear from large business owners who own hundreds of thousands of entities, and their experience and information on how they got there is valuable, absolutely. But when you're looking at starting something small or taking one jump into the right direction, I want to hear from the person that just did it, that just experienced this.
I think that's brilliant, and I just got a big smile on my face when you said the small businesses. I mean, that they are such the core of our country, our world. So companies that don't get it, I'm going to take a little leap here and infer that more often than not, those are the larger companies that either don't get it or don't feel that they have the capability to engage,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't know how to engage. What does it say about the company, if anything, that they get the idea, but they struggle with it in practice? What are they worried about?
I think we see like a lot of privacy concerns in some regards, and ultimately like some companies are just thinking with what's in it for us,
Mm.
where our small business hosts are very into mentorship and wanting to give back to elevate all the people around them. So that is something that we have to find a way over the hurdle.
Yeah. And I read a really interesting article on Business Insider about the era of AI, how individuals now can do pretty much any job, but companies are looking to see if the individual can actually prove their work. So work trials are something that's really getting a lot of press to throw some individual into a couple days stint at a company to see how that person thinks and doesn't uses AI, of course, but doesn't rely on the tools that they have and to see how they think and how they work with their potential colleagues. And it's just such an interesting transition that we haven't really talked about before this boom of AI is that we have all these amazing resources at our fingertips, but they want to see who's the person behind all these resources and can you do the work? So I actually do think that hopefully for us and for everyone who's looking for a job, there is going to be a bigger shift into larger companies allowing individuals to start work trialing before they get hired.
It's going to take those companies, I believe, to be very intentional in doing that, because management at a certain level that's going to say this is a great idea aren't the ones on the front line that are going to have, you know, Gabe or Alex or Bill walking in the door with their smiley, shining face and say hi. And I've been in situations where it's pretty much like, okay, here's our business plan. Go sit there and read it. Well, that did nothing for me. That did
Right.
absolutely nothing for me. So when it comes to companies big or small, and it might be different based on the size of the companies, do you think those companies really want the person to be able to find the right fit? Or do you think they're more interested in people that are gonna fit what's already there?
The really good question. I think what I'm seeing is that there is a mix of both, but because that a lot of companies are losing great employees, I think and I hope a lot of companies will spend the time and resources to really build into their employees and create a loyalty to the brand and to the employee. Right now, I think retention is a big issue in large companies. It's easy for anyone to go to the next big startup. They'll give you more money, they'll give you more resources, and you don't really develop loyalty. So the goal and the dream is companies can see the value of their employees and really work on retention. And that's not giving them a business plan to read and say, do this because we want you to. It's what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? How can we make sure that you are the best employee for us and we're the best company for you? And we work well to pump each other up.
Mhm. What about the smaller companies out there, Gabe?
In terms of in terms of
In
uh,
terms of them being able to be intentional in their what you call job shadowing or internship.
mhm,
The big companies might have a bit of a struggle, and the
sure.
the competition with other big companies is keen. That's not always
Yep.
the case in the smaller business world. But
Mhm.
how do the small businesses accomplish this?
Mhm. I mean, we see that a lot of the small businesses, like they they are a part of this because they want to give back. They want to they want to trying to find the right words for this. They hmm, they are like these people are a part of our communities, right? Like these business owners are a part of our communities, and they were in our Staj's shoes not too long ago. That could be 5 years before, a year before, 10 years before, but they've now gone through this, and so I think a lot of these business owners in our communities, like they do want to give back, and they see this as a way to help bring up these other individuals. I know that was kind of repetitive, but I hope that kind of like answers,
If
uh,
the answer's
uh,
correct and
So
it's
you know,
repeated, that's fine.
yeah.
I'd much rather have a repeated correct
I,
answer than
I was like,
going down a path of is he serious?
can I also
uh,
say it's
yeah,
really expensive to hire, especially for small businesses. And so if you're looking to hire one person for your 3-person company, you need to make sure that that person's a good fit.
Mm.
And if they leave, then it's going to be starting the process all over again. And especially if you're working from such a small business that you if you pick the right candidate, you can scale quickly. But if you pick the wrong one, it's going to be pretty detrimental to your
Yeah.
company. So it's an interesting perspective from their perspective as well on making sure that you have the right people supporting you and in your everyday life.
yeah, and that like kind of goes into, we're not saying that Stage isn't a recruitment tool, but eventually, we want Stage to be a part of like possibly a recruitment process and a pipeline for companies. It's like, okay, like you're looking for new talent, like we can supply new talent who's interested to come and see what it's like working in this industry. And then it could be a perfect pipeline to maybe hiring one of those individuals.
And a perfect opportunity for the company to see someone that might be their right answer. And it brings
Yep.
to mind the phrase that a lot of people don't care for, but hire slowly, fire quickly.
Right?
So
Exactly.
if you're
Hmm.
truly hiring slowly, having someone come into job shadow or intern, whether it's one person in a very small company or one person in a bigger company or department, you get to
Yeah.
know the person you're hiring. That's part of the hire slowly. That's part of the
Yeah.
investigative work that a company, an employer could do. Let's jump on a little bit more to the reality of stage or internships, not the company. Don't get me wrong.
Hmm.
When people think of internships, they typically imagine a pretty narrow set of roles. They think of uh, oftentimes high school or college level. So from what you're seeing right now, what's actually out there?
You are given a couple of very remedial tasks and you are sitting in front of a computer for 3 months working with your other intern. There's no real opportunity for you as an intern level to meet with the CEO or to meet with a founder of the company or to meet the head of marketing or head of content. There's no way to see what is a potential trajectory in that career is like. Right now, you are doing the work, like I said, that no one really wants to do. And you're not actually getting a good sense of what the job's like. You're getting a good sense of what the lower level tasks that no one wants to do is like.
Mhm.
And the goal is you don't stay in that space of that job for very long. You move on up, and you can see a lot of. You can be at that company for a long time, but there's no opportunity out there to see different aspects of this job or this industry outside of this lower level position.
To add on to what Alex just said, of you really get to only see this one aspect. That's what I think. That's where I think internships are lacking, and not all of them. We do see some that move people around quite a bit, but majority of internships just put you in one single role for the entire time you're in that internship. And internships are usually a month long, 2 months long. So we're looking at like summer or winter internships, right? and they just stick you in this one role. But I think the real value that comes from internships is the ones that put you in different roles throughout your time there so that you do get to experience
Mhm.
different facets of it. Because let's say someone's going into the the medical field, right? And they're placed in a medical internship and they're just in this one piece sitting behind a computer. But the medical field is so vast. Like, how could you possibly know that you want to be in medicine just by being in this one single role? Maybe that's not necessarily the best example because usually there's other qualifications that come with being in the medical field, but like you kind of get the gist of it.
Yeah, and what that sparks is one of my very early guests on this show is an amazing story, but he went from security guard to doctor,
Mm.
and
Wow.
MBA, PhD, doctor, incredible story. But what he continued to post about during his residency was that they shift you from discipline to discipline to discipline, and
Mm-hmm.
he
Hmm.
found the area that he was most comfortable in putting his skills to work.
Yeah.
So it
Yep.
does happen in some areas. My wife's son graduated university in the UK a couple of 3, 4 years ago, and they have a program there, which is basically an internship. You might want to check this out. It's basically an internship program with some pretty major companies that go through all of the graduates in a particular year, and you're hired on as an intern, but
Mm.
you're hired on, and they
Hmm.
move you every 3 months. And I believe it was a 2-year deal. Every 3 months, they move you to a different department.
Great.
And the hope is
Great.
you'll like the company and you'll find part of the company that fits you.
Right.
And it's a risk from the company's perspective because the person they select may not want it. But it's another way of going about it. Um,
Yeah.
are there roles or industries offering experiences that you might not have expected?
For
Mm.
the companies we're working with, Staj, or in general?
Just in general, your experience.
When we were speaking about the internship opportunities, it just got me thinking about cooking. And
Mhm.
I am aware of staging because of my brother's experience, but it shows you it throws you into a high pressure environment like a kitchen, and it gives you the chance to do the job that you potentially would be hired for. And I think that's such a cool experience that not a lot of different types of industries do.
Yeah.
I think I think we do see, and it's maybe not necessarily like publicized, but so many people are willing to let you step into the room with them. And I get to experience this like through the content that I make is just knocking on doors and like kind of seeing who will let me in and seeing who will let me be a part of the process. And I'm talking like a lot of real obscure jobs, house cleaners at an extreme level, tour guides, people who make guitars from scratch, dog walkers. Like those are very non-traditional roles, albeit. But if you dream it up, I'm pretty sure I could like promise you that there's going to be somebody out there doing something very similar to it if it's not exactly like what you're thinking about. And I do encourage people like just knock on the door and like if you're interested, if you're genuinely interested, I find that people one, most people love talking about themselves and like what they do, and they're very willing to share.
Yeah. And just another thing I've experienced in life is when you do that, whether you're the knocker or if you've been in the position that someone's knocking on your door, it's always a good idea to do your homework enough to know how can I benefit you and your company as opposed to this will be really good for me in my life.
Yeah,
So having the right perspective happens. This is probably
absolutely.
part of your stage business development program, but uh, where should there be opportunities that there just aren't right now?
So part of the way that I see Staj's business plan and like see Staj's offering is inspired off of my time at trade school. And trade school is a very formal way of education. And in your first year of trade school, at least in my experience, it's an exploratory year. So this is the year where you go through and try all the different jobs. The way I envision like the best version of Staj is kind of recreating this exploratory program in a non-formal environment. So how can we offer, you know, you Bill to go try 10 different jobs and gather information on what you like and what you don't like, that's kind of where I see room for us,
Mhm.
and not necessarily something that exists in a non-formal learning environment. That's kind of the key piece.
Yeah,
Okay.
and doing what Gabe does, going from corporate jobs to working at a hot dog stand. There's no opportunity to do that in one program, so to speak. There's no resource to give you insight into 7 different careers, 7 different industries that you never thought existed, because maybe you don't actually get a job or want a job from any of those, but it gives you really good information for yourself on what you liked about each of them and what you disliked. And all of that data for you helps you figure out what you actually want to do.
That's brilliant, Alex, and thank you for clarifying it so well. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier of defining success. What is success? Again, if it's only the money, good luck in life. So here's a well, I'll come back to that question in a second, but I just want to give you in particular, Gabe, a real world example that I thought of this recording today. This past Monday night, I was with some friends, one of whom's a young guy who originally his career ambition was to play hockey, hopefully professionally. It isn't going to happen, as is the case with most people wanting to get into pro sports. At this point, I talked to him and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to go back to school." I said, "What are you going to do?" He goes, "I'm going to go to trade school, and I'm either going to go to be an electrician or get into HVAC." Which trade? I said, "That's fabulous. That's great." What would you say to someone like that as far as him deciding? Uh, yes, they're both trades, but they're somewhat related, but they're pretty distinctly different. What advice would you give this young man?
I would tell him to just be open as much as possible to all the trades. If his school has an exploratory program, definitely go through that with like an open heart, because you might find that you actually love something that you didn't think you did.
Mhm.
And yeah, electrical and HVAC are two very different fields, but they're still trades, so they're going to have a lot of similarities at the same time. I can give you like my own experience at trade school.
Mhm.
After your exploratory program, you're supposed to pick 3 trades, and you go a little bit more in depth into those before you finally pick one. And so the 3 trades that I picked was HVAC, carpentry, and machine shop. And then I had a fourth. My fourth one was my backup, and that was computer aided drafting and design, which is the one that I ended up taking. And so I didn't get one of the main trades that I wanted. So they put in CAD. I'll just refer to it as CAD. They put in CAD, so I had to go through it again. And I actually, when I dove deeper into that trade, I was like, oh, I actually think that that's the best one for me. And
Yeah.
so it really wasn't one that was on my radar initially, but it ended up being the one that I chose. And it was based on a few factors. Like, one, it was where I felt most creative, because I felt like I am a creative person. So for him, like if he loves hockey, maybe there's like synergies with sport or something in a certain trade that maybe another trade doesn't. Like, he
Yeah.
can find things that are, important to him in whatever field. But I would say just the overall advice, just go into it with an open heart, because you might find something that you
Yeah.
totally didn't expect.
What pops into my mind is HVAC is probably pretty important in hockey if you're skating on ice.
See? Maybe there's a career there that he didn't even know existed, right?
Yeah,
Like,
maybe he becomes
yeah.
the master of the ice, and I don't say that facetiously. I mean, it's just like people in sports fields, baseball fields, that are the experts in the right grass and drainage. Anyway,
Yep. I'll say,
here's yeah.
real quick, I'll add on to this just because you might like this. I've done a few videos now with the NHL going and building hockey rinks, and I worked directly with the ice team, and it's a very specialized team that comes in and builds the rinks. They bring in the trucks, they bring in all the equipment and stuff, and like, who would have thought that like that's a job, like, building ice rinks, and it's a real thing. So there's opportunity there for him if that's what he
That's
like wants to
amazing.
go after.
And I
That's
think
amazing.
it proves, right? You can almost even create your own destiny if you're interested in HVAC and hockey. Like, where can you find that sweet spot? And by trying everything and talking to the right people, it will get you in the right direction. And maybe you fill that gap yourself and you create your own industry.
This is all just Wonderful. And everyone listening, I hope you're taking this in because, trying to know what we like and how we can adapt if what we like doesn't come in the original form,
Mhm.
what's related to it that we can get the same type of satisfaction. Now I'm going to throw a tough one at you, I think. Do internships actually solve the problem or just give the impression that they do?
That is a good question.
I don't
You're
think they solve
welcome.
the problem. I don't think they solve the problem. I think because at the point where you choose the job, right, when you're in your late teens or in your early 20s, like you're still choosing that job based on a lack of information, like we kind of went through earlier. So getting placed into an internship is in that same field that you just picked is almost just like perpetuating the problem a little bit more. Because I don't often see people go into that internship and then not and then turn around and do a full 180 into another direction. I think they think it's just part of the process of what you have to do to get into this field. And so I am Alex, I'd be interested to see if you have a different opinion, but that's kind of like where I stand in on it.
I think it opens the door, but you have to be the one to do something with that open door. And I don't think a lot of kids at 18 or 22 know what to do with that open door. You have this opportunity to reach out and be bold and speak to as many people as you can at that job, but a lot of individuals stay in the job description that they were told to do, where the value of an internship is allowing you access to these types of people that you wouldn't have without this internship. And that takes a lot of guts and a lot of practice. And I don't think it's top of mind for students to know to do that. So it's not as successful as I think internships are made to seem, but it is a tool in the toolbox. I don't think a lot of people know how to use these tools though.
Good answer. Good point. So let's talk about, is there a role that you've seen or that you've created with Staj? So your experience in general or specific to Staj, where the expectation and the reality were completely different?
Building Staj.
Okay, good answer. And anyone that's not on YouTube needs to go to YouTube and fast forward to get to Gabe's face. It was a brilliant reaction.
I think it's such a cool story because we are lucky we speak to entrepreneurs all the time. And I selfishly ask them for help for Staj. I'm like, who's your small business accountant? And how do I set up an LLC? Becoming an entrepreneur and starting a business is the hardest thing you could ever do because you have to learn on the job. Lucky for us, we have our resources, our hosts to ask questions, speak to about their experience, and we take bits and pieces from them. So it's quite meta for Staj for us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it is.
it's all being a founder is very glamorized online, and you don't realize what it's like until you actually do it. And it's a founder of starting your own podcast or starting your own YouTube channel, really anything, because outside of the glitz and glam, there's accounting, there's marketing, there's finance, there's all these things that you didn't think you needed to do or had to do or know how to do. And so I think it's such a cool use case for Stage
Yeah.
101 to get a experience on how to become an entrepreneur while we're helping those to figure out if they want to
Mhm.
become entrepreneurs.
Well,
And
go ahead, Gabriel.
just like just one little layer like on top of it, we get to speak to all these people who are going through these experiences themselves, and I think like things that we hear and feedback that we hear is like, like that industry wasn't exactly like what I was expecting, or this job isn't exactly what I was expecting. And that's like valuable insight, right? Like whether it's
Mhm.
positive or negative, like this person is figuring out for themselves in real time what works for them and what doesn't, and that's really special.
Yeah, and it takes a good bit of courage and self-awareness to realize that what I thought was going to be great isn't really, and then move on from that because now you're
Mhm.
questioning the whole process. But you made me smile, Alex, when you mentioned Stage and the glamour of being a founder, when in reality, what you have found out is that early on, you were doing all the stuff you said the interns do.
Oh, still am.
Oh yeah.
You're doing all the
Yeah.
filing. You're doing
Still
all the
am.
menial things. Glamorous founder.
But I'll have to
So,
say,
go ahead.
it shows you that you found your thing when I am happy to do the remedial tasks.
Yes.
Staj feels so right for Gabe and I. It just hits this like inside part of your core that feels like we have something so good that that's the glamorous part for us, right? And then doing the small tasks that the interns would do is not what I was expecting, but it's something that has to be done.
Yeah.
And because I love this thing so much that it makes us continuously want to do that thing and get better and
Yeah.
build this thing.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on and go back into an area we talked about a little bit because I think I think this topic is as important to everyone, regardless of where they are out on their career path. And that's if someone's already in a few years, whether they started at 18 and now they're 24, whether they started at 18 and now they're 54, but they know that what they're doing is wrong for them. What would you really tell them to do next?
There's no right answer here. There's no wrong answer here other than like if you know in your core that it's wrong, then you have to find a way to make a change. And this kind of a point from earlier that I guess I did want to talk on is like, is that risk tolerance? When you're later in your life or later in your career, there is more of a risk based on the life that you've created for yourself with the resources that you have, and making a change at that point may be harder than making a change in your early 20s, right? You can't fault yourself for that because no one would have foreseen that, you were going to be making a change later down the road. But find ways to give yourself little tastes of what other careers may look like is a good place to start. And something that I like to bring up to people that is very accessible and very approachable is workshops. It might seem a little obscure at first thinking about it this way, but there's lots of workshops that are offered in your area, no matter where you are in the world. And they can really, really give you insight into your interests and into if you think that this is something that I can do. And usually they're very affordable, they're accessible, and it's just layer one, right? You're just scratching the surface and you're just starting to experiment. Because I think that if you're feeling stuck, then the thing that you need to find is your curiosity and like what fires you up again. And so how can you start to experiment in your life with the things that are accessible to you? And that's what I encourage people to do. You can't move too fast because it's scary. You can't exactly just like leap from one thing into something that's in the complete opposite direction. At least most people aren't going to,
Mhm.
So taking it slow and understanding that like you're not alone is also important in this. And you can be easy on yourself because it's a very hard thing to do.
Yeah. And understanding, like we said, how do you define success and be aware that that's changed and that will constantly change. But right now, what does success mean to you?
We're going to run a little bit long here. I hope that's okay for the both of you.
It's
This
okay.
is just a fascinating conversation, and you both have so much wisdom and insight and great ideas that I don't want to cut it short.
Thanks,
Uh,
Bill.
so, a couple of things. When someone's well into whatever they're doing and they suddenly realize that it's quote unquote not right, how much of it is the job and how much of it is where the individual has ended up? And what I mean by that is what we touched on earlier, how we define success, how my life has changed. Does the job relate? How much of it is actually the job versus in terms of that forced pause?
Yeah, I think it could be, it's changing circumstances at a job can create that. It could be changing priorities within ourselves that can create that. So I think it could be two things at once. It could be one thing, one or the other at once. And sometimes we don't see either of it coming. For me, like when I was working a full-time role, the job changing was what created the change in me. And
Mhm.
so, like, I've experienced that firsthand. And then I think Alex can speak to as she's developed in her career, maybe her priorities have
Mhm.
changed along the way. So I definitely think that it can be both, and it's okay if it's either of the two.
Yeah. Great point. Nothing to say.
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you a real world example. One of my guests, I think it aired late November. This gentleman was here in Missouri. He was a highly successful criminal defense attorney. He defended murderers and the like, and had a tremendous reputation as being very, very good at it. But he started to realize that that wasn't fulfilling him.
Mhm.
He is now the founder, owner, and a very successful founder, by the way, Alex, founder of Askinosie Chocolate, which arguably couldn't be further from a defense attorney. He and his daughter have a company where they source beans from the grower. They travel to the Philippines, they travel to Ecuador and Africa, and they have partnerships with the bean growers.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do they bring the beans in and make fabulous chocolate, uh, they help those communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They set up the business in such a way that it's not taking advantage, rather it's enhancing. So the fact, how easy was that? Listen to the episode. It wasn't necessarily
I can
easy,
imagine not
I can
easy.
imagine. Yeah.
but he is so fulfilled and has
Yeah.
touched
Yeah.
so many
And doesn't
lives.
that just fires me up so much, because it's like you can really pull a 180, to find purpose and to find meaning and to define
Mhm.
yourself in a new way. And like he faced it himself, like he faced it
Yeah.
head on, and then like came up with the solution to that. And that's what's so special about this. It's like we all have it in us to do it. You just need to
Yeah.
find the right time and resources and way forward.
I also think your previous experiences aren't a wash, right? He takes what he's learned and what he's experienced in his criminal defense in career, and he's moved it. Now, there's all these different aspects of his career that it's probably touching, but everything builds off of each other. I think there's such a cool story. There's a workout studio in New York City that is run by ex-incarcerated individuals.
Mhm.
So they created this probably 10 years ago now, and it is incredibly popular. And they hire incarcerated individuals, and it is such a cool story that they took their previous experience, and now they're not only incredibly successful, but giving back to their community. And it's called Con Body, and it's just such a cool experience. Incredibly hard workout, I have to say.
Oh, yeah.
But anyone can take what you've done in life, and it's not just career, it's just all these different types of interactions that you have, and it forces you and changes you in a way that leads you in different directions, but all your experiences are positive experiences.
Yeah. Some of my very best, closest friends, mentors, and people that guide me are ex-cons, and it's amazing. Okay, well, I'm going to start working towards closing this out, but it's going to take a little bit because now I've got some questions for you to
Cool.
jump in whenever you pick who goes first or passes. But has building Staj changed how you think about your own decisions?
Alex.
Yeah, it has. It helps you figure out what's important and how to prioritize, when to move quick, when to move slow. I do say, though, that I have taken some of the key principles from my previous experience in corporate and have taken that into Staj. It just at a very micro level, but it helps you figure out what's important now and what to put on the back burner on what's successful. And I also think, Gabe, let me know if I'm misspeaking, but Gabe and I's communication has been so great because we have such diverse backgrounds that we have each other's opposite strengths, that we have to learn on how to communicate as clear as possible. And I think it's made our partnership so incredibly strong.
Cool. So between the two of you, who's more comfortable with uncertainty and who pushes for commitment?
That's an easy one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
an
it
easy
is.
one. I'm all about uncertainty.
That was a toss-up. I mean, it was an easy one.
That's a very
Uh,
easy one.
My life is
Yeah.
all uncertainty all the time, and I
Yeah.
thrive in that environment, though, right? And so I think
Yeah.
with people exploring their roles, I know this wasn't part of the question, but like people who are exploring their own roles and their own careers, like you have to face that question yourself. Like, are you more comfortable in a space of uncertainty like entrepreneurship and building your own thing, or are you more comfortable, in a sure thing, like in a role at a company? Neither answer is right. Neither answer is better than the other. You just have to be aware of what is
Right.
best for you based on your personality type.
I couldn't agree with you more. Okay, a couple of quick fires. Answer at will. Something outside of work that matters more than it probably should.
Golf.
Being outside in the sun.
Okay. Both doing the same thing in different ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's something you've changed your mind about recently?
Oh gosh, something I've changed.
Go ahead, Gabe. You can say driver versus 5 wood.
Yeah.
Alex?
I'll be running. I've just
I was
started
good.
running.
Wait, I was gonna say that.
I'm running long distances because I'm training for a full marathon, and it is super hard. But once you get past the hard hump, it is like transformative to you.
Okay.
It feels amazing and it gets easier, and it's just a big metaphor for life. You have to get through the hard stuff and then it gets easy.
I was
Gabe,
gonna
I
say
can't wait
that.
to hear your answer based on the reaction you were having when Alex was speaking.
That's why we're so in tune, Gabe.
This is why we're so in tune. Except this answer is not gonna be in tune. I was gonna say that running long distance is a made-up challenge that we don't need to do, and
Everyone, I take it back. We're not in tune.
I don't think we need to do it. That's no.
Okay, well, nice to know you two will have some conversations in a little bit, and hopefully Staj continues.
We're not a
And,
running company. so-
This might be the appropriate final question to that one. It might be you, Gabe. What's a decision you're still not entirely sure was the right one,
Yeah, saying that
beyond the
answer.
way you answered that question?
No. I stand by it.
Oh,
It's
I
fine.
agree with you.
All right, Bill, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, what's something decision that you've made that you're still not entirely sure was the right one?
Alex, do you have an answer for this? I need to think on it.
That's a hard one. Do you have an answer, Bill?
Ooh.
Yes, I do. And when Staj has a podcast, I'll be happy to jump in. When you
Go
get
ahead.
to the point that I'm at in life, there are a lot of decisions that I can look back. And what I've learned or come to embrace is to quit focusing on the decision, in particular decisions that led to something less than ideal, and just try to
Yeah.
focus on what did that teach me,
Yeah.
and try to, what I say, learn the lesson and leave the event. So that's what I strive to do, is to look at those decisions. We all make bad decisions. We all
Sure.
don't want to admit it sometimes from ego and such, but there's a lesson there when we do.
Yes.
Yeah,
And I think if you remain optimistic, glass half full kind of person, then you can look at every decision you make as a positive.
I agree with both of those. So like bouncing off of that, I think the reason why I had such a hard time thinking of something when you first asked the question is because like no bad decision necessarily like stands out in my mind. And I
Mhm.
think no matter if a decision that I made in the past was right or wrong, like it got me here. And I feel like this is exactly where I need to be. And so whether it was the right decision or wrong decision, like it doesn't necessarily matter at this point because like I'm here and I'm in the right place at the right time. And so I haven't necessarily like focused on a one bad decision that I've made in the past.
Very, very wise. And I mean that sincerely, very wise. I've had to go through every single thing in my life to get to the point I'm at now, and I really like myself now. And that wasn't always the case. So those decisions can certainly help us. So winding down, we've talked about how people choose, what gets in the way. We've talked about what happens when those choices don't hold up. So I want to ask each of you the question I ask every one of my guests. Answer whichever one of you wants to go first, but in context of everything we've talked about and everything you know, what's the point?
Find the thing that fulfills you. And that is not one thing. But if you can align on the thing that makes you happy and fulfills you, you're going to have a huge life. And yeah, that's it.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Like, if if we define ourselves oftentimes through our careers, like we talked about earlier in this podcast, then it's up to us to find the thing that makes us the most fulfilled and the most happy. And why does that make us the most fulfilled and happy? Being real with ourselves and just following, those North Stars, I think is really important. If the point is finding the right career for us, then it's, going down a path of self-exploration to find what makes us the most happy in that way. But if the point is finding happiness in other regards throughout our life, spending time with our family, being outside, running a marathon, not running a marathon, like it's up to us to kind of explore that within ourselves. So I think life is like, and the point is a little bit of about our self-exploration through life.
Brilliant. So, Alex, Gabe, thank you both. This conversation about something that most people recognize, but they don't always say it out loud, how we end up doing what we do, what it takes to change direction. Listeners, I hope and believe some part of this has resonated with you, and if so, take it to heart. Take that forced or self-imposed pause. Do some reflection. What do you think success is for you? You can find out more about Staj and about both Gabe and Alex in the show notes. And as you can tell from having listened to them this long, they're bright, they're brilliant, they're interesting, and they have good hearts looking to help people. So check them out. And for the two of you, Gabriel and Alex, thank you for being on What's the Point?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank
This
you,
is so
Bill.
great.
Well, thanks for listening to What's the Point? If this conversation meant something to you, we hope you'll follow the show and share it with someone who might benefit from it. And if you know a guest with a story worth exploring, send me a message, bill@billellis.com. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know your thoughts on the show, and I'll see you next time.